I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Chasen with Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW's TV show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by FlintHillsAuto.com. I am Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com, and the man to my right is Scott Chasen of Fog.net. Do we want to talk about it right now?
Do we want to talk about it?
I think we should probably talk about it. What happened? Have you ever been to Coastal Carolina?
Yep.
It's a beautiful place.
I need to head out there. Obviously not now. They're going through a situation, but
yeah, that was pretty incredible.
Yeah,
they couldn't even practice where they would practice because of a hurricane, and then they brought the hurricane with them.
yeah, you think about, and Les Miles actually talked about this, about dealing with some of that adversity too when they were going through Katrina, but the situation that is to show resiliency, to kind of work through that, to change up their schedule, go and beat a Power 5 team for the first time ever, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
It's impressive. You can interact with us on social media at Facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll question and make your game predictions at TheDriveShow.com. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear on each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at GoPowerCat.com and Fog.net, where we live most of the time. We will start things off now with our 2-minute drill. And the 2-minute drill is sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat.
Well, the skies in Manhattan look sunny as the Wildcats move to 2-0 on the season with a 52-0 smackdown of Bowling Green. Fitz, this is the first time in K-State football history that the offense has gained 500 or more yards in its first 2 games of the season. Should the Big 12 be worried about Kansas State?
A little early for that, but this is impressive. When you stop and think about what K-State used to do to opponents in the non-conference schedule when Bill Snyder got the program really rolling. When we're talking the late 90s, early 2000s. And these first 2 games in terms of offensive output and yards has exceeded that. That puts things into context how well they're playing early in the season. Now, how much can you judge from beating Nichols, which is a good FCS team, and Bowling Green, which is an atrocious FCS team? I don't know. But I'll say this, they play clean, they play efficiently, they do the things you need to do to win at the Big 12 level, which is control the ball. They've had more than 40 minutes of time of possession in both games. They lead the nation in that. They have a very good quarterback in Skylar Thompson, who leads the nation right now in QB efficiency. Their running game has gained more than 300 yards a game. They are doing all the things you would think a really good football team might do, and yet we still don't know if Kansas State's a really good football team because they have to go to Mississippi State next, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, you plunge right into the Big 12 schedule. There's so many unknowns about this team. How will they react to adversity? Because let's be honest here, folks, they have had no adversity. They have so controlled these games and so manhandled their opponents. It's just been stomping on them from the get-go. But that's what good teams do in games like this. They just take care of business, and they played like 88 players in this game.
Yeah.
So that was really invaluable to get with this new rule where you can play freshmen 4 games and they don't burn their red shirt. To get a lot of those guys in that won't play the rest of the year, just invaluable.
Yeah, and let me not quite disagree with you, but say they have faced a small bit of adversity just in terms of changing a coach and learning, how to deal with new assistants and terminology and players and everything. And I mean, so far they've handled it as well as could be expected.
It's pretty incredible to handle an all-new system offensively, and it's a system that has a lot of movement, a lot of shifting, and really go through these games with pretty clean performances, no turnovers and limited penalties. Pretty remarkable, really is. Meanwhile, in Lawrence, the skies are not so sunny. Kansas lost to Coastal Carolina 12-7, the program's first win over a Power 5 program. Scott, should KU fans be worried about KU?
I think there is some reason to be a little bit concerned if you're a KU fan. It starts for the reason of understanding that, these are still a lot of David Beatty's players. So it's not necessarily fair to look at the program, to look at the team and say, wow, this is what Les Miles is. We don't really know the caliber of player he's going to be able to bring in and keep the schemes that they will ultimately run. They are on their second choice offensive coordinator. You don't know how that will develop over time. But I think there have been reasons to panic, and look, it starts with the offense. You see that interception there. Carter Stanley had a lot of space in front of him. He made a couple of risky throws, a couple of picks, one unhappy with a miscommunication with the wide receivers. He said he put in a call, and it sounded like another call, so the receiver ran the wrong route. It put a defensive back in an area he shouldn't have been. But the fact of the matter is, both of these times, the ball was put in jeopardy, and the offense just hasn't looked good.
No.
Then that handcuffs your play calling, because Les Miles, it seemed like they went away from the quarterback. They didn't want to trust Carter Stanley to make plays, but they also weren't going to take him out of the game. So then it becomes very predictable. What are you going to do? You're going to run the ball. You're going to run the same running plays that you've been running. And look, Coastal Carolina was prepared for it. It was a real mess. And then you start to look at the coaching issues. You know, David Beatty, fourth downs became such a big thing with him. Substitution penalties became such a big thing with him. KU called 2 timeouts on the same fourth down. Now, Coastal Carolina took a timeout in between. KU came out with the same offensive look, and they didn't have a backup plan. They didn't have the idea of what if Coastal Carolina lines up in a way that's detrimental to what KU wants to do. When you're making mistakes like that, it means you don't trust your quarterback to change plays. You don't trust him to read things at the line of scrimmage and say, no, we're going to go away from that. If you want to be concerned, I think that's why you're concerned.
I noticed in watching the broadcast, there seemed to be a lot of frustration on the KU sideline. They probably just absolutely did not see this one coming. And it felt like through most of that game, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's close, but we'll get out of this, and they didn't get out of it.
And here's the other thing you have to look at. Coastal Carolina left 8 points on the board with 2 missed field goals, a missed extra point, and they didn't try another extra point because they had missed the first one. They went for 2. They didn't get the 2-point conversion. That's 8 points if you just talk about 2 field goals, 2 extra points you put on the board. That alone is more than Kansas scored. Kansas scored 7.
And what's amazing is when they came into the game, one of their strong points was supposed to be their kicker, and he just had a horrible day, and yet they still won. Well, speaking of bad days, the Big 12 played 2 games against the SEC on Saturday and lost both. LSU rolled into Austin and claimed a 45-38 victory over Texas. And West Virginia was absolutely embarrassed at Missouri 38-7. Remember when we made fun of that spread? Well, they were right. Should the Big 12 be worried about the Big 12?
I think it may be a little early in some respects. I thought Texas did a good job to hang with LSU, and I think, for me, LSU, I've been impressed with them. Maybe not more than any team in the country, but just seeing what they've been able to do offensively, reinventing themselves and being aggressive. That being said, yeah, West Virginia looks like one of those teams that's definitely going to be at the bottom. I think Texas Tech and Baylor have had at least some impressive scores. I'm intrigued to watch them more and see kind of what happens there. I think there's some concern, though, at the bottom of the Big 12, and right now that looks like West Virginia and Kansas.
Wow, West Virginia is shockingly bad. I was a little surprised by this. I thought Texas was going to make the breakthrough. After the Sugar Bowl and beating Georgia, I thought they were ready to make a breakthrough. Now, LSU's quarterback was simply fantastic. They're running a new offense, as you mentioned. It's kind of an NFL variation of the spread, and they looked really comfortable in it. And LSU typically has a very good defense. It's turned into a little bit of a shootout. It's kind of funny they make fun of Big 12 defenses, and while Texas's wasn't bad for all the talent they have on the field, LSU gave up a lot of points too. This one's going to haunt the Big 12 because not only was it a loss, it was a loss on the home field between 2 teams that appear to be 2 of the better teams in those conferences. So push comes to shove, if let's say Oklahoma loses to Texas again, that's going to be like they lost to all of the SEC if you're a voter and someone that's picking who's going to be in the playoffs. So this was bad. This conference needs some redemption. This weekend they'll get a chance at that. Really, Kansas State winning at Mississippi State, even though they're considered to be lower tier teams in their conferences this year, that would be a big win for the Big 12 to get back that road win. I don't know. I just didn't think this weekend looked good because Missouri lost at Wyoming and then destroyed West Virginia. That game wasn't close.
And again, I would say the bottom of the conference is especially where I look at it and say, yeah, the Big 12, you think about Rutgers in the Big 10, for example. And look, the Big 10 wasn't perfect. You think about a team like Colorado and what they did against Nebraska. But that being said, I do agree with your point in saying that playoff-wise, especially at the top, and then you look at the bottom in those teams, there's reason for concerns kind of on both ends.
Should we take a moment of silence for Nebraska? Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Now, a quick look at your poll question results. A poll questions brought to you by Film at 11, your Go Fast, Look Good, Play Hard custom shop.
Well, let's take a look at last week's question, which was, will either K-State or KU go 3-0 in non-conference play? both will, got 10%. You're already wrong, sorry about that. Only K-State, 70%, looking pretty good. Only KU, 5%, again, apologies. And neither will, 15%.
70% of the folks out there believe K-State will win at Mississippi State. This week's question is this. What Big 12 football program made the worst coaching hire? And I put all 4 new coaches in there just to be fair. A, Kansas with Les Miles. B, K-State with Chris Kleiman. C, Texas Tech with Matt Wells. D, West Virginia with Neil Brown. And there's 2 answers in there that are difficult to choose between. Make sure you vote over at thedriveshow.com.
Well, that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill, but we will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
So I'm a father of one. I gotta find a babysitter. I found Care.com and I was blown away. Through the platform, I was able to find local and experienced candidates along with their reviews and rates, which were way more affordable than I anticipated. Care.com really put me at ease knowing that they were all required to go through a background check. If you're like me and you need to find someone reliable for your childcare necessities, check out Care.com. Find the ideal sitters for your childcare needs.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. And the 2-minute drill is sponsored by Houlihan's. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat.
Well, Kansas State 2-0 on the season, and on Saturday it travels into the SEC by playing at Mississippi State. Fitz, what is at stake for the Wildcats?
Well, this was a game at the start of the year. If you were picking K-State to be 9th in the Big 12, which the voters did, or even if you were picking K-State to go 6-6, 7-5, this was probably a loss. Some people thought K-State go in there and win because Mississippi State lost a lot of people. Mississippi State rolled in, it's hard to say, rolled into Manhattan last year and just dominated the game. But they had a senior quarterback who was a big physical runner and they didn't handle that well. And they had about 4 NFL draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. It was a mismatch, it really was. It's less so this year, particularly now that K-State seems to be playing to a new identity. Ironically, the same identity Bill Snyder always wanted to play to, but really hadn't been doing that for about 15 years. So, it turns out K-State's going to be a running team. They're going to be a physical team. They're going to be a defensive team that is going to take away things that you want to do. That's the Snyder philosophy, but that's the Chris Kleiman philosophy, and now he's doing it even better than Coach did for certainly Snyder 2.0, maybe the exception being that 2012 season. Mississippi State is a favorite. They're on their home field, and K-State is a very confident team. There's a lot of positives at stake in this game. They can go into Starkville and get a win, and it could redefine not only their season, but their identity as a team and as a program. Suddenly people aren't going to be looking at K-State as a team that was picked 9th in the Big 12 and won 2 games they should have won, but did so impressively. They're going to look at K-State as a team that not only is in lower half Big 12, but based on what else is going on in the conference, might be upper half Big 12. So it becomes very interesting. There's a lot of positives, a lot of things to gain in this game, Scott, but I don't see many negatives unless you get injuries and blown out.
Sure. I wanted to ask you about confidence. I think that's interesting because you look at the production that K-State has had. I mean, think about it this way, 1,000 yards and 100 points, and it's been 2 games. That's remarkable. Is this team just going in there with all the confidence in the world right now?
When you put in new systems, I don't care, this isn't about football, basketball, this is about any work environment. When you put in new systems and the employees, or in this case, the players see immediate results, it builds up this great belief in those systems that makes the systems even better. And right now, K-State's in that position. They will get hit in the mouth, as Mike Tyson said. Will that plan stick after they get slapped upside the head? Will they be able to believe in those systems and play through it?
Yeah, and Bill Self actually had a win against Michigan State, I believe, in his first season. And he said at the time, this is the type of win that builds you credibility with players. I think you're seeing some of the same things
we
now.
always tend to look at things from fans or voters or whatever, but you got to have the locker room. You got to have them. And Kansas now steps up into a big road game themselves when they go to Boston College on Friday night. BC is 2-0 on the season and opened the year with a win over Virginia Tech. Scott, is Les Miles' team even close to being ready for this challenge?
Well, it's funny you start with Virginia Tech, the quarterback of Virginia Tech. It's Ryan Willis, the former KU quarterback, but Look, it's hard to say whether or not they will be ready just from a function of, at times, this team has looked like a prepared, put-together football team, and then you saw the last game, which again, I mean, 2 timeouts on a 4th down is something, and that's coaching staff, that's not players. That's something that's pretty inexcusable. So I don't know is the answer to that, because you think about the way the KU run game played, 173 rushing yards. Puka Williams made his return. He had 99 rushing yards. Khalil Herbert, 80 yards on 8 carries, 10 yards a carry. KU has strengths. It has things it can play to. It has ways that, in the Big 12 at least, opponents won't have seen them before, and that it can mix things up. The question is the passing game. Is it prepared? Is Carter Stanley in a position where he has the trust of his coaches, of the play calling, just to simply be able to do the things that you would want your quarterback to do? I don't know that he has this right now. KU has to get its quarterback situation squared away, and they don't want to end in another kind of David Beatty scenario where you switch your quarterback 3-4 times during a season. They can't do that. I think that's number one this week. If Carter Stanley is your quarterback, you have to trust him. You can't get scared with play calling midway through a game and say, nope, we're only going to run the ball. This has to be a situation where you trust him to make plays. If not, you need to make a change and figure out who that guy is.
You just got to emphasize to him, he can't take chances. He can't do basic things and throw into coverage. And, you know, it's all a spiral now. If he doesn't believe his receivers are running the right route, he's not going to trust them to put the ball in the right place. So they have to find a way to get the trust back.
Yeah, and let me say one more thing about Carter Stanley. He's in kind of a tough situation in a new offense. There was one play, 2 blitzers kind of showed that they were going to come after the quarterback from his right side, and Puka Williams actually pointed out, hey, those guys are coming. Carter Stanley said after the game, he does not have the freedom to change that play or change into a different look. Whoa. That was a 3rd down play. It went for it was a sack, a loss of 10, 5 guys blitz. There were 5 guys into block. You know how that usually ends up. That's the kind of situation where you get into trouble. You have to trust your quarterback to be able to do something there, or you're basically just sending him out there in a lose-lose situation.
It's interesting. Skylar Thompson, in back-to-back games, has audibled out of passing plays and handed it off to James Gilbert for touchdowns. So you've got to trust your quarterback. And now we step out of bounds.
Well, the Kansas City Chiefs opened the season as a 3-point favorite at Jacksonville and cruised to a 40-26 victory over the Jaguars. If the Chiefs can keep Patrick Mahomes healthy, a big if, are they the team to beat in the AFC?
Yes, next topic. Look, the Chiefs were marvelous from the get-go. I mean, they scored on the 3rd play of the season. It was a 3rd down play, and Sammy Watkins hit his seam, and Patrick Mahomes put the ball on the money. And the Chiefs were going to roll in this game, and then he got a little dinged up. He got an ankle rolled a little bit, and all of a sudden it looked like this was going to be a football game, but then they kind of manipulated the play calling and got into some better stuff for him. But Pat Mahomes is absolutely marvelous, and so are the schemes that allow receivers to get wide open at times. And he knows when to throw a laser and when to throw a lollipop. He's a very smart quarterback with a good running game, a good passing game, and a defense that was nominally better, let's say, nominally better.
You can give it to him.
Than what we saw last season. This is very promising.
Yeah, and I would say this. You know, I know a lot was made early in the game, the no-look pass that ended up not going for a touchdown, and then they end up kicking the field goal. Look, the Chiefs have the type of offense that you can gamble, you can try and do creative and inventive things, whether with play calling, whether with Patrick Mahomes just saying, hey, let's see if this works. And I think the reason you get that is because that offense is so dynamic and impressive. And yeah, I mean, look, the Patriots are very good, and they added, obviously, a very big weapon. We'll see if anything comes of any potential investigations, because I think that situation itself is kind of fascinating. But yeah, look, the Chiefs are a very good team, Super Bowl favorite going into the year. We'll see what they do.
Well, Antonio Brown might be as much a distraction as a benefit. We will see. But the Chiefs are off to a 1-0 start.
Well, now let's hear from the fans.
Yep, let's hear from the fans. Our fan question this week is this. Coastal Carolina celebrated its win by breaking a Jayhawk piñata in the locker room. Cool or classless? Stan from Topeka asks. I thought it was kind of funny, but why in the world did you have it? I mean, I understand you're confident, but you had to order the piñata. Someone had to say, hey, Tony, did you pack the piñata? And they had to get the piñata there, and then someone during the course of the game had to go into the locker room and hang the piñata to make sure it was there for the team.
They probably just brought in a guy to do it, just to protect the piñata, preserve the sanctity. You don't want anyone to see it and get excited and be like, oh, I want some candy, and break it. No, look, here's how I feel about these things, and maybe this is a perspective being a little bit younger, but I think it's all fair. You're seeing like the turnover chain or these cool like rituals that teams do. KU played the song New York, New York after it won the first game, because if you can make it it there, you can make it anywhere. And Les Miles had an orange juice and a sandwich in New York, and he said they were really good, and it's just kind of emblematic of you need to be the best. So yeah, if you're going to have your traditions, you're going to have fun, you can do those things. I obviously, you don't want it to happen against you if you're KU, but I think at this point, college football, you can have some fun. It's fair game.
It was not a well-constructed piñata.
No.
I got to say that it was too easy to break. A guy with a crutch made a lot of damage on it. It's just not right.
They do need to clean that up.
And we don't know what kind of candy it was.
Oh, that's a great point.
I hope it was a little like Snickers and not like, little tiny.
Yeah, those like mini M&M packs that have
Yeah.
like 5 in them.
Yeah,
Very disappointing.
These are important things.
Yeah, well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. And when we return, we will look at our predictions here on The Drive.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show, and now it's time to look at our predictions. And the predictions are brought to you by Vanderbilt, your work boot center. And remember to make your weekly predictions at thedriveshow.com. And let's look at last week's results, plus the Oklahoma-Houston game, which I forgot was on Sunday when we put it in last week. Anyhow, we all ended up 2-2. We're all 3-3 on the year because we're all remarkably average. And now here are this week's picks. And we start with K-State plus 8.5. So Mississippi State needs to win by 9 or more.
I set my rule last week. I have to pick K-State after betting against them twice and them making me look very bad in doing so.
What's beautiful about this is you can take K-State and they can lose by 8 or less and you win.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of gambling.
Your pick?
Oh, K-State.
Okay.
That's
Next is Kansas plus 14.5 at Boston College.
I'm going BC. I can come up with no reason to pick Kansas in this game, which probably means Kansas will cover.
I'm also going BC.
Yeah, that's tough not to
Yeah.
do that. And our last game of the week is Iowa plus 3.5 at Iowa State. So Iowa State is predicted to win. You got to win by 4 in Ames.
Yeah, I'll take the Cyclones on this one.
I will too. We're all going to be the same, aren't we? We're going to be the same after 3 weeks.
We're going to be boring. We'll find a way to go 1-1 again. 1.5 and 1.5.
Usually we try to divide it up, but we can't find any good excuse to divide those up.
Yeah.
So we're going to all be the same. Unless you guys want to pick Iowa, go ahead and do it. Again, make your picks over at thedriveshow.com. And now it's time for our On the Clock segment. And On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One, by Local for a strong local community, And we will start with Mr. Scott Chasen of Fog.net.
Well, Puka Williams made his return following a one-game suspension. It was part of a domestic battery charge. There were other things he had to do, including taking an accountability class with regard to violence. And he was, he spoke about it after the game. It was the first time he spoke to media. He began by apologizing. I thought it was an impressive kind of moment for him to take responsibility. He did not hide from any questions. He answered everything. He said he plans to speak to the team about the incident. Again, it's hard to deal with these situations. He thought there was a chance he wouldn't even be back on the team, and now he's trying to do his work to kind of repair that. On the football field, though, KU needs to find creative ways to get their best player the ball. He is back. He is now on the team. That's the reality of the situation. They're running the same plays that Les Miles has run in the past. They're running plays that David Beatty ran with him. They need to be more inventive with him. We saw it at the start of last year. 99 rushing yards, a good total for Puka Williams. 5 yards a carry, less than what he did last year, and they weren't finding ways to get him the ball in the pass game. Only 2 catches for 10 yards. That's a way he can be more involved, and they can use him to kind of take some of that pressure off of Carter Stanley.
Well, Kansas State announced a new $105 million building project for athletics. It is all privately funded. It is all funded by donations and receipts that K-State athletics get, and yet some people are upset that they're doing it. You know what? Athletics drives the budget. Athletics makes money, and they're going to spend $105 million to make K-State athletics even better than it has been in the past. Good for them. And that's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you next week right here and all week on social media.